My name is James de Waal. I'm Senior Fellow in the International Security Department at Chatham House, and I'm here to talk to you about a joint seminar that we ran last month with the Saudi Institute for Diplomatic Studies in Riyadh. We focused, among other things, on the security situation in the Gulf, and one of the common themes was that there was wide concern over a number of recent developments. In particular, the Iranian development of nuclear weapons, which was perceived in Saudi Arabia as not just a threat in itself, but also as a means for allowing Iran to interfere in the political affairs of its own neighbours. There was also a certain amount of concern over the so-called US pivot to Asia, that growing US access to shale gas in its own continent might lead to a reduction of interest in the Gulf. And then finally, there was a certain amount of concern about the future direction of British policy. There have been suggestions that there was going to be some sort of British pivot towards the Gulf, that Britain might be in a position to replace some of the US defence assets and defence capabilities that were present in the Gulf. And this gave the background for quite an interesting and new discussion. In terms of the discussion of Saudi policy, the difference really was in tone rather than content. There was a sense that Saudi Arabia was in a position to take a slightly more assertive tone in its foreign policy, that it might be willing to risk upsetting some of the relations with its traditional closest partners, including the US and UK, in pursuing what it saw as its own interests. In particular, there was some discussion about whether Saudi might need its own deterrent capability to deal with what it saw as rising Iranian capabilities. But this really was a discussion that was focused mainly on tone rather than practicalities. When we turned to the future of UK policy, the discussion was a little bit more concrete. Again, there had been a certain amount of confusion among observers in the Gulf about what British intentions were, born partly from discussion about a notional UK pivot to the region, but also because of continuing hangover, really, about UK policy towards Iraq in the last decade. In the discussion, we really narrowed down what we thought was likely to happen. We thought that discussion of a major UK strategic shift towards the Gulf was probably a little bit premature. There would be continuing security and defence cooperation, but probably at a lower level rather than in terms of large-scale military deployments. There would be a lot of joint training, a lot of joint exercising, a lot of joint planning. There would be, if there was a major disturbance of regional security, like it occurred with the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in 1990, we thought it was likely that there would be a major UK military response as part of a broader international coalition. But there would be less UK public support for some sort of preventive military action. Now, this meant that I think at the end of the conference we had a slightly clearer and more realistic idea of what the UK policy in the region might be. The last point I'd mention is that there was a sense throughout all the discussions that the relationship between Britain and Saudi Arabia was actually a lot more than some of these issues of policy which we were talking about. There was a hard core to the relationship which really had more to do with trading, cultural, and especially personal relationships. That meant that it was natural that both countries should talk to one another, and also that there was a level of mutual understanding and mutual willingness to discuss some of these issues in a very frank and open way, which really might overcome any particular differences there might be on this or that area of policy.